Hi, everyone, and welcome to Spotlight with Scientists in School. I'm so excited. I have a filmmaker, conservationist, and I love it, urban wildlife junkie, Julian Victor, joining us. Welcome to the show.
Hello there. I almost said welcome. Hello, hey there, Betty. How are you doing? It's the other way around, right? So, how you
Yeah.
doing? Great to be on here. Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. I should be thanking you. This is such a treat to have you on the show. I want to get started right at the beginning. What sparked this incredible love of nature that you have?
Well, what sparked it is when I was 5, I actually watched a documentary about zebras on National Geographic. It was Zebras Patterns in the Grass. And it was about the zebra migration that happens in Botswana. And I was so mesmerized, and I was like, oh my god, this is so cool. I'd love to get into this and see that. And funny enough, zebras are now like my second favorite animals after lions, which is funny because my favorite animal eats the second favorite animal, so it's kind of funny. But then that's what made me want to do it. And funny, into what's really crazy is the fact that it was produced by Dereck and Beverly Joubert, who are National Geographic filmmakers and explorers in residence. And they kind of inspired me, and I wanted to be like them. And now flash forward years later, I not only have met them, I've worked with them, and I can consider them to be friends. And it's super crazy. But that really sparked it. And then from there, I was like, I wanted to get everything with wildlife. My parents bought me books, and like I used to cut. Fun joke is I used to actually cut up the books and pretend my bed was the Serengeti. My mom used to hate me for that, but it was great, and now she gets it. But at the
Right.
time, she's like, I paid so much money for that book, and you just cut it up and did that. So it's that sparked it, and I always wanted to like people in school always wanted thought saw me as the animal kid, and I used to always every time we had a science animal related project, I'd always excel at that, and
Right.
it and now years later, some people are even I have family and I have who are like, wow, you were wanting to pursue this ever since you was a kid. So
Right.
it's pretty surreal to see that love as nature, like that love I had for nature as a kid, and now it's now transcending into my adult life.
You mentioned zebras and the Serengeti, and I actually was so lucky to go there a couple of years ago. And zebras are fascinating and beautiful in real life. Like I was so mesmerized with lions, of course, like you said, are cool, but it was also the giraffes. The giraffes like won me over too. But zebras are up there.
You know, it's funny. Giraffes have this kind of. I've seen giraffe like I went to Africa too, and I've seen like giraffes, and they have this look, this kind of snobbish look they give you, where they're like,
Oh, I
"Who
know which one you're talking about.
like, who are you, and why are you here?" They have this look every time you see them. They're eating their grass, and they just, "Who are you?"
I can't imagine what it's like being a filmmaker. Let's get into that. How did that start?
Well, it's actually interesting. So, of course, like I said, I was always into Dereck and Beverly Joubert, and from there, I used to when I used to watch like National Geographic and Discovery Channel and PBS religiously. Like I used to back in the day, not to give away my age, but back in the day when there was like VHS tapes, kids would not know what that is. And then that when that happened, I used to record all those nature
Right,
shows
right.
and rewind it back and watch it and rewind it back and watch it.
And I want to ask, were you ever at any point though, as a kid, discouraged? And the reason I ask, sometimes people are like, "Oh, I don't know, what like getting into the arts can be sometimes, iffy. It's difficult. It's competitive." Were you ever swayed away from that, or were you fully supported?
No, I actually wasn't. It's challenging. It was challenging, even though as much as you wanted to do it, like to see it happen now, but the road to it was really bumpy because
Mm.
especially because when you to get National Geographic like that national at the time, National Geographic seems so creme de la creme, and to get into wildlife
Yes.
film, you want to go and you want to do it, but it just seems so out of reach. For a long time, it felt like it was just a pipe dream,
Right.
and you wanted to pursue like biology and whatnot, but it didn't work. So I said when I did decide to go into film, my parents were not initially too happy. They're like, well, why do you want to get into filmmaking? Why do my dad wanted to be a nurse? And I was like, we fought him, and they're like, oh, you're gonna go into film school, why, and what are you gonna do, and this is not the best thing for you. And I like uh to get into, but I fought it, and I said I had this always I'll prove you wrong type of attitude, where I was
Ah,
like, I felt like it was this underdog, like I still carry it to this day where I'm like, I'll prove you wrong. I'll prove that I'll prove you wrong. And I just prove. So it's funny how it all kind of happened. And then like the one of my boss who actually worked for mostly weddings and stuff, he actually knew people for Nat Geo, a producer. And then he asked me one day, like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, I was a little embarrassed when I said, I was like, well, I want to get into wildlife nature. I was like, okay, I think I know someone for you. And then he gave me the list and
Right.
he sent me to a friend that he knows, and then I spoke to him, and through talking to him I got to meet National Geographic producers and speak to them. And then by chance, like National Geographic had a shoot coming up in Toronto about, of all things, our trash pandas, raccoons, and that's how I got it. So you never know how it's gonna work.
What advice would you give a kid who really wants to pursue their passions and their dreams?
Oh, like make sure that this is something, make sure that this is something that you want. Make sure it's something that you want to pursue. Make sure you have the drive. It's something deep in your soul that you want, and you will stop at nothing to get it. Make sure you do. It is like, be patient for it, because oftentimes we think, you know, especially in the age of social media and everything so microwave and instant, that if it doesn't happen, then oh no, it's not gonna, if it doesn't happen right away, we have to just give up. Like no, like keep pushing and appreciate the slow rise. Surround yourself with like people who believe in you and who want to nurture your passion. Reach out to people who you admire. Like don't be afraid to reach out to people. Like now with the age of communication and social media,
Right.
and also too, I will say, keep your options open,
Open. Yeah.
because sometimes don't always focus like, well, if I don't get
Yeah.
this specifically, I won't get it, because
Yes.
like maybe have other options that you can work on, because you never know how it will come full circle and get to where you actually want. And take
That's
it
great.
from me, I
Yeah.
did videos and weddings, and it ended up getting to like
Where you
uh
want to be.
in wildlife. So you never know where it takes you, but always keep your options open, because then if you want to pursue it, it'll always find a way of coming back to you. And then
Right.
when
Right.
you need to go for it, so just
Yeah.
always keep pushing, and yeah, appreciate the grind.
Let's talk a little bit about wildlife. You know, the reason I seeked you out is we have a workshop at Scientists in School called Noticing Nature.
Mhm.
And I love that you talk about noticing nature and wildlife, even in a big city. So, what kind of wildlife can you see in a big city if you start noticing nature?
In a city, it depends. Well, it depends. Since we're in Toronto, like people just think that Toronto is just pigeons and raccoons, which is
Yes.
not. And you actually can see a lot. Like certain places to seek out wildlife in cities is green spaces, like parks, parkettes, your back, even your backyard. It can have a lot of wildlife. Bodies of water like swamps and marshes and shorelines, that could be great too, especially for like shorebirds and migrating animals. And another thing which I recently discovered were cemeteries. Cemeteries can be great places. And I think what COVID did is people made people to really appreciate animals and wildlife and nature in their neighborhoods.
I've heard you say that coyote sightings are on the rise.
It's on the rise, but we shouldn't be too concerned. I think there's a lot of misinformation, and the reason why we're seeing them more now is because we were kind of on lockdown in COVID, and that made a lot of wildlife kind of come out more. And in winter it's tend to spike up more because they're easier to see. Like there's no vegetation, there's lack of vegetation from bushes and trees, so now you can see them a lot more and they're more visible. We shouldn't be concerned more about coyotes, we should be more concerned about people feeding coyotes. That is like the biggest reason why coyotes are becoming a lot more bolder, because they do their best to avoid us,
Right.
and we need to appreciate them and coexist and have a better understanding so we could appreciate them for the great animals that they are.
Have you ever traveled outside of Ontario to see some amazing wildlife?
Yeah, I have. Finally went to Jasper and Banff, and I saw like elk and bighorn sheep, which was nice. And then I went to Wyoming, and like my first time, I saw there was a there was a grizzly bear on a moose kill, which was pretty cool. And then I saw like a herd of like over 100 bison and pronghorns, which was cool, and lots of mule deer, which was nice. But my best experience was when I got to go to Africa, where I got to intern for Dereck and Beverly Joubert for 6 weeks. And I got to go to Botswana, and I got to go to the Okavango Delta, which is like one of the prime wildlife areas in the world. And I literally saw every single almost all the iconic species. And I saw, of course, lions. I saw lions so many times, but then it was just like I saw all the big animals. Like elephants were like squirrels out there. There were elk everywhere. The whole experience was just amazing because I saw all the African predators. Like I saw African wild dogs, which are rare. And
Yeah,
then
is it the big five? Like it's called the big
I saw,
five,
yeah,
right?
I saw the big five. I saw the elephant, rhino, buffalo,
Yes.
lion, leopard. I saw
Yeah.
all the whole big five on one trip. Oh my God. And then flying over the Okavango Delta too, where you just see like the mosaic of like grasslands and marshes and habitat, and you see elephants from the air. I was like, I could be
All
here
day.
forever. It was just amazing. So that was an experience I will never forget. Like it's true. Like they say Africa changes you. It definitely does. That was fantastic.
Now you're mentioning photography, and I know you're into photography. Tell me the most amazing thing you have photographed.
Eddie, that is hard.
Wow.
You ask some tough questions. That is a tough question.
Well, how about if I ask you where you shared a photo with me, and I've never seen a white squirrel before.
Okay.
What's up with that?
Okay, a white squirrel, like that is cool. And what the white squirrel is like, it's what's very unique about white squirrels is like the one I saw two, and it was in Trinity Bellows Park here in Toronto. And what's interesting is one was albino and one wasn't. So one actually so you have the leucistic gene, which is the lack of pigmentation. So it's the recessive gene. So that one had like normal eyes, and then the other one was an albino. So
Wow.
for some reason in Trinity Bellwoods, that particular park, there usually seems to be white squirrels in that area. The white squirrels are actually a gray squirrel. They're actually an eastern gray squirrel, which comes in. You usually see them in the traditional gray color, but also you see them in black, which is also another interesting neat thing because black squirrels are also have a more melanin, like kind of like with jaguars and wolves. In Toronto, we tend to see a lot of black squirrels. But as you gradually leave the city, they become more gray. So Toronto is very unique because we have a lot of black squirrels. So you usually walk by and you're like, oh, squirrels, whatever. But no, that black squirrels are actually very unique to our city because we have like two variations within our city, and that is a cool something that you overlook completely. You're like, oh, that's pretty unique. So yeah.
Yeah, I find squirrels quite fascinating. Actually, I think they're pretty neat. Now there must be some challenges to taking photographs of wildlife.
Oh, there's so many.
So many. Tell me a few. What would some be?
Well, there's weather. You have to battle elements. Sometimes you might go out there, be ready. The animal is not there, so it's a lot of waiting, knowing their behavior. Like with photography, it's like okay, you just get the shot, and like you might get an action shot of a bird or an animal. But sometimes with filming, it's more like you need the behavior, and then you want to and then also too, it's like the other thing is you also try and get behavior that has not otherwise been seen before, which is a challenge in itself. And then you also want to get it in a very creative way. Then you also have to try and get it in a way that it's not unethical, where you're not trying to put the animal or anything in danger or stress the animal out. So it's all those things. There's some people who photographers and stuff who do bait animals to get the shot, and so they can post stunt on the gram and post them. That's something you shouldn't do. And getting too close to the wildlife to kind of alter their behavior, when reality what you should always do is keep a respectable distance. An experience I had, like a wildlife experience here in the city, was seeing deer in the cemetery during the rutting season. So you're now seeing these huge trophy bucks running around chasing the does, and I'm like TMZ running after them with the camera, and then you're getting these great shots, and you're getting also a very cool dynamic of a very natural behavior in a very unique setting, and that stands out. So it's to see that, and that's also what ultimately keeps me going, the sightings and experiences like that, which is cool.
What would you say are the backpack essentials if the kid wants to get out there? What do you suggest?
I would suggest definitely binoculars. That's a biggie. So binoculars, a camera. It doesn't even need to be a huge camera, a huge top of the line camera with lens, because those are expensive. And you go and ask your parents, you're like, hey, mom, I want like that camera. Is like, you know how much the lens is? Yeah, but you know, nowadays with the way that like certain phones are now, like their definition in pixel is amazing. So now you don't even need that. So definitely that. I will speak from experience with this, but snacks. I can't tell you how many times I've gone out and forgot to get water or or snacks, and I've been hangry trying to get the shot, and I'm like, I just want to leave. I just want to leave. I can't do it. I have to stay. And hangry on a shoot is not, and I've done that way too many times. Where I'm like, I should have gotten food and I
You should have
didn't.
had a snack.
Yeah, I know.
Now,
And but you're on. But sometimes though you're on such an adrenaline though trying to get stuff, and then once you're done, you're like, oh, I'm hungry. So it's like, yeah.
fantastic. You have also participated, since we just brought up birds, in Black Birders Week. Why was
Mm.
that such an important event for you to be a part of? You talked a little bit about this on social media.
It was cool. What was interesting about it is how it came about. Like it was weird. It's amazing because I met so many great people and who are now like really good friends of mine. Like, you know, shout out to Demisha Dennis for Outdoor Brown Girl World, Peter Schwarrier, of course, Salita Guy, Rhiannon Crinton, and all that. But what it's how it came about is because it stemmed from the Christian Cooper situation in Central Park, and where he was in a very dangerous, that could have been a very dangerous situation, and dealing with racism and discrimination, and you find out that he's a birder and you're like,
Yeah.
since when do Black people bird? It's like, and then it opened up this whole it opened up this whole world where there's tons of Black birders and naturalists and biologists, and then it finally got us to come together. So and then immediately after that, it was the George Floyd situation. So then we all just kind of came together and started finding each other on social media, and we would have otherwise never known that. I would have never known. Up until that point, I thought I was the only Black guy into nature at this point, and just to see so many people and just see them that looked like me, and we could talk, and now I could nerd out and talk to them about birds and wildlife was super cool. So it kind of, in a weird way, that whole situation was a mixed blessing, but it turned out to be now great, where now we're all like meet each other, and now we're able to like talk, and it shows that, hey, like we like nature just as much as everybody else. So it was really awesome to be a part of that, and just see the camaraderie, and just to see that was just fantastic.
How can we encourage more diversity, though, and representation?
I would say like reach out, like outreach is very important. Like I know sometimes they want, like it's very important to uh, go out to areas that you would otherwise, in communities and schools that you otherwise wouldn't necessarily go, because oftentimes you feel like you can feel excluded, where it's like its nature is more of designed for a certain type of people, and it's kind of, which is ironic because it's all about the diversity and biodiversity of animals, but there's only one group that kind of really has the privilege to experience it. And also know that you can go out there and see different wildlife within your city. Not everybody can go to Algonquin, or not everybody could go to like some of these places. So you kind of go take kids in these communities, these marginalized communities, see that there's wildlife with even in your neighborhoods, and then also empower voices in the community, like, and don't just have us as like, okay, we filled our quota and we're token, like, okay, great, you know, and now, yay, we're diverse. And no, it's like you keep it ongoing, and you have us there, and so representation is important. Like it's starting to change, but more you need to kind of push it a little bit more, so that like it could drive home the message, because sometimes it's like it's still going on. I'm like sure if you remember there was like a photo where it had Greta Thunberg and it's a couple of environmentalists, but they cropped out the one African biologist, and you're just like, well, you just completely cropped out the entire by like a representation of people who might see them, be like, okay, wow, they're there to talk about the environment. So it's still going on, and you still have to kind of push it and realize that, hey, we all, in order to save and preserve wildlife and habitats around the world, everybody has to be involved, and those communities can be also the lifeblood in preserving these spaces.
I'm going to switch gears because you do something else that's really cool.
Oh
You
no.
have done a Zoom Skype video operating gig on the
Yeah.
side. Which was the best gig you've ever done?
Without a doubt, Michelle Obama. That was that was very stressful,
Yes.
but it was because it was like it was for me that had to like get it, and I had to be in touch with their people on Zoom, and I had to communicate with everybody at City Line to get it ready for our host Tracy Moore to talk to her, and I'm like waiting online for her to come on, and I'm like, okay, this is Michelle Obama, and when she popped on, I'm like, okay, she's ready to go, and then she was going, and I was like, this is pretty. I was like, this
That's
is
cool.
The other one, another cool moment for me was I booked Dereck and Beverly Joubert on to promote their film about pumas in the Andes, and to set them up and have them on breakfast television and have my two worlds kind of collide was pretty surreal.
That's pretty awesome, eh? So this is perfect timing to bring this up. You got this gig now on breakfast television. On the wild side, right?
On the wild side, yeah.
On the wild side, I love it. I thought it would be fun if we just turned the tables a little bit and did a little bit of on the wild side here, where I ask you a few questions. Are you game? Are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm scared, but let's go. I'm ready. Let's
do it. Let's do it. I'm looking at my first question here. I think you got this. Cats cannot taste sugar. True or false?
Ooh. Right out the gate, Betty. Okay.
Sorry.
I'm gonna say cats can't. No, false. I'm gonna say false.
Oh, it's true. I didn't know this one either.
Oh no!
Apparently, cats are called sweet blind. Those receptors do not work. And interestingly enough, the bitter receptors in tongues work because most poisons are bitter. But cats have no need for anything sweet. So I learned something too. I didn't know that.
I just did too. Okay.
Which of these animals cannot jump? A giraffe, a porcupine, lice, or all of the above?
I'm gonna go with all of the above.
You got it. That is true. So lice, it's a myth. They don't jump. Giraffes, their legs can't handle it. And porcupines, I guess they have.
Because I was like, it was in my head, the Rolodex of all the wildlife documentaries of giraffes, and I'm like, I've never seen giraffes jump. Okay. All right.
Last one. There's only two mammals that lay eggs.
Platypus and echidna.
Yes, you got it. Look at that.
All right, I got it. Okay. All right. Yeah.
It is easier when you're asking the questions, right? And you got the answers right there for sure. It is harder being on the other side. Julian, this has been such a treat. You are totally inspiring. I loved all your messages today. I can't wait to share this with students and kids and adults that are going to be watching.
I appreciate it. Betty, this was a blast. This was fun. I was like, oh wow, I am really sweaty. This is fun.
No, it was so great. Thank you so much.
I love to talk to wildlife. I could talk to you all day. It's funny. It's just great.